I go into practice all the time and we talk about efficiency and the ROI in ortho. It's really easy to add ortho, but the question is, are you doing it efficiently and are you getting the maximum production out of it?
Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. Every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice.
Hello, ambitious dentist. Today, I have the pleasure to bring you Dr. Amanda Wilson with Straight Smile Solutions. So if you are a general dentist, if you are a pediatric dentist, if you're an orthodontist, and you've ever thought, either I should add ortho to my practice or I can do ortho better inside of my practice, our guest today probably has some tips for you that is going to help you out with your business. So Straight Smile Solutions is an orthodontic consulting company that helps all the people that we just talked about with different areas of their practice. So saving money on lab fees, matching doctors and treatment plans with the best labs out there, and just helping the practice owners that aren't orthodontists better understand how to add ortho to their practice. So Dr. Amanda, thanks so much for coming on today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
So Dr. Amanda, the first thing I always like to give people to have as an additional way of introducing is to have you tell us how you got to the point in your life that you got to own an orthodontic consulting company, because you are an orthodontist and you've moved from a practicing orthodontist to a consultant for orthodontists. And I think people would probably find that interesting.
Oh, sure. So it's a little bit of a long story, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible for those who haven't heard my story. And hopefully it will provide some young dentists some inspiration. And sometimes practicing or clinically practicing isn't always the best fit for everyone. So, so the long story made short is, I went to UCSF for dental school. I met my husband there. We sat next to each other because we both had last names that started with W. So it was me in anatomy lab with, my last name is Wilson, with Wong, Yang. So, it was really interesting. Me and a bunch of Asian dudes, but that's the funny part. So, I was bound to marry one of them. So, we got married. He's originally from Hawaii. So, we did practice for 10 years together in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm orthodontist. He's a general dentist. We loved it there, but home for him was Hawaii. So, we decided to move back and do what a lot of people do and take care of his family there. And there's a lot of cousins. So, anyways, that's that story. So when we moved back, I'd already been practicing for 10 years in the San Francisco area and loved it. Things are going pretty well. But during the time we were there, we had the tech boom and the tech bust. And I was definitely one of the earlier Invisalign adopters. At the time, I was charging $7,000, $8,000 per Invisalign case, creating a practice out of that. And slowly things started to change, and that was a big part of my practice, and I was trying to figure out what was going on, and all of a sudden there was a billboard that went up on the highway for Invisalign for $29.95, and I was like, whoa, who's doing this? Yikes, I'm charging $7,000, and I was thinking, these patients aren't going to go to this guy, he clearly doesn't have that much experience, like a diamond or whatever they called it back then, provider, preferred, premium, elite provider for Invisalign. He actually had quite a lot of cases. And honestly, I saw some of the cases and they were actually pretty good. So, at one point I met the guy and I was like, how are you doing this for $3,000? At the time he was getting like major, it's when you actually got a check back, from Misconceptions every quarter or every half year. He was getting a pretty sweet check back and, his margins were pretty slim, but his point was, I'm doing this because it generates me a ton of other revenue in my practice. I'm doing veneers and I'm doing implants, and Invisalign is not there just for me to make money. It's there for me to do more general dentistry. And I was like, that's something I don't have, because Invisalign for me is for me to do Invisalign, right? Mm-hmm. So that's something I can't compete with. And between him and my husband wanted to do the same thing. He had a really great reasons behind it, I said, okay, let me start helping out some of these doctors. If you can't beat them, join them, and let's just make sure they're doing a pretty good job. And hopefully they'll throw me some cases, along the way, and we can collaborate a little better instead of being angry that they're doing ortho. And hey, I mean, come on. General dentists do every kind of work anyways from every specialty. I mean, they do scaling root planing, that's perio, right? They're doing endo, that's endo. They're pulling out some teeth, maybe not all the teeth, but that's OS. So they're seeing kids. So, I mean, why for such a long time we thought that ortho was a protective profession, that they would never go into ortho. It was a very safe profession. That's why it was maybe such a hard specialty to get into. So, but of course things change. So, I mean, that's just how things are. You have to adapt and you can't get upset. So anyways, long story short, I started helping dentists, and of course I wasn't charging for it initially. And then I said, hey, this is actually kind of fun. And I like it. And I got really into creating products and creating better aligners and working with other companies that create aligners. And eventually it turned into a full-time profession. And now I have 2 preteen teenage kids, and they're very active and into sports. And there's just no way that with both my husband and I in the clinical side that we could be as active as we are with our kids and have the flexibility to, go to their games or travel with them for meets. So I really loved having the flexible job. So anyways, that's my long story of how I got here.
So was the guy that was selling it for, $3,000 for the Invisalign, was he a general dentist or was he an orthodontist?
Yeah. No, he was totally a general dentist. Orthodontist would never, it wouldn't make any sense.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Like you said, he was making money off doing the other work.
Right. Because when you said that, I immediately thought of someone here in Arkansas, Dr. Burris, who, if you know,
Ben.
Yeah, exactly. He, and he there was a lot of people saying that since he's an orthodontist, he couldn't do general dental services, in the state of Arkansas. I don't know the case, that well, but it was a big deal on a national level. And when you said that, I was like, when you said that about the other guy, I was like, oh, how did Dr. Ben get in trouble for that? And that guy didn't. But that makes sense. So he's a general dental practice owner. So let's talk about, so let's talk about, just ortho in general. What do you feel like has made that barrier for dentists that are not orthodontists to be able to offer ortho services in their practice? Like, how did that barrier get lower? What happened over the last 5 or 10 years?
I have a great infographic that actually goes along with this if we had a visual here. But I mean, if anybody wants to see it, feel free to contact me. I'm sure you're going to give the follow-up information. But basically, let's talk about the evolution of ortho a little bit. So, back in the 50s, 60s, and even 70s, there was no prescription necessarily built into the brackets. So everyone had to learn how to bend wires. And we talk about wire benders, right? That is the hard part about ortho. And it was very difficult. You had to go to school for years to learn how to bend wires. Well, we still learn this in ortho because just in case there's a one-off and we have to bend wires. But for the most part, everything is built into the brackets. And now bracket placement, as we've learned with 6-month smiles, which was the first one that was doing it. And now there's a zillion other options that are lower priced that are out there. If you want to do brackets and wires, but you can have them digitally placed, which is done extraordinarily accurately and way better than I could even do it. And you just print a transfer tray from a 3D printer, and this all comes to you like in the mail as a dentist, and you slap it on and lecture it, and it's pretty much idiot proof, assuming you're picking the right case. And general dentists can do braces too, and there's really no special skill set that goes into it. I mean, you can learn what you need to know in just a weekend course, and as long as you're picking the right cases, like I said. And then, of course, Invisalign came out, and they extended to general dentists. And as long as you're picking the right case, and as long as you know how to tweak the treatment plan, and you do this right, everything should turn out as well. So that's pretty much, how we got there. And general dentists are doing ortho, and they're doing it pretty well. A lot of them.
Cool. And so, for the dentists that are out there and they're thinking to themselves, is this even worth it to add ortho to our practice? What does a typical practice that you see that hasn't had ortho, that has added it, be able to generate as far as new revenue? Are they able to add a substantial amount of cases? I mean, talk to us a little bit about the economics behind that.
Sure. And this is actually, I have a great algorithm for this too. So I go into practices all the time and we talk about efficiency and the ROI in ortho. it's really easy to add ortho, but the question is, are you doing it efficiently and are you getting the maximum production out of it? So you got to set up the systems ideally to make this happen. So what it really comes down to is if you set up the systems ideally for a typical ortho patient using the right brackets, using digital bracket placement, or using a scanner and coming up with the best ideal treatment plan for whatever aligner system you're going to use, you really shouldn't have to see these cases more than 4 times. And that's what I call efficient. And that's what most orthodontists I know are doing. So patients coming in, you're either doing a virtual consult. There's tons of virtual consult programs that are out there now. You got SmileMate, you've got Smile Snap. There's lots of them where they can basically submit their photos online. You can screen the patient. You can go ahead and contract the patient and at least open up that dialogue is what you think they need. Then they're going to go ahead and come in for the start. The same time that's the first appointment. You can finalize the treatment plan. Of course, you're doing the in-person consult. You're doing, all the rest of the evaluation, perio screening, cavity clearance screening, oral cancer screening, and you're going to do your start. So your start is going to be either done usually with a scan or impression, and that's first visit. And then delivery is the second visit, so that's visit number 2. That's where you're either going to deliver the braces or deliver the aligners. You're going to do your IPR, bond your attachments for aligners. And hopefully if you're doing braces, you're using self-ligating brackets. That's the most efficient, visit 2. If you're doing things really well for aligners, honestly, you really shouldn't have to see that patient anymore until the end. And I really do believe this is possible. I do this all the time with doctors. You just have to have a great accountability loop for your patients to check in. We call these appointments on demand. That's what dental monitoring calls them. It's a great system that's out there. It's turnkey. Or you can create your own check-in process. But this is where you're making sure that the patient, this is where most general dentists kind of falter. You make sure that the patients understand that they are not to proceed to the next aligner unless everything is tracking ideally. And if you have a good treatment plan and your patient is following the tracking program, aligners work out great. They really do, assuming you picked a great case. So sometimes a 2-week schedule or 1-week schedule is, it works. But for some patients, you have to tweak that a little bit and you have to customize it. And this is where, there's no cookie cutter approach to aligners and getting good outcomes. So I work with the doctors to come up with this process so that it's more streamlined, so that their patients are ideally, hopefully there's no revisions, refinements, or mid-course corrections in their aligner cases. I mean, the numbers are pretty staggering. Most general dentists, and I know you're not a clinician, but any of your dentists on this program should have their numbers in mind. Like, what is your rate of revisions, refinements, and mid-course corrections? And what those are terms for when you start an aligner case and you have to redo it, or you have to stop and make a U-turn or fix something. So most orthodontists, I know, their rate is somewhere around 8 to 9%, 7 to 8%. Most general dentists I know, their rate is somewhere around 60 to 80%. And that's just a staggering difference. Yeah, and this is really where the cha-ching comes in, the efficiency. Everyone could do ortho, but are you doing it efficiently? And are you actually making money on this? Because if you're just doing it and this patient's coming in and it's taking a really long time and you're spinning your wheels, patient's getting pissed off, it's not a good experience, you're not making money on this. So why are you doing it? So that's really, I think, where the value is and where doctors can improve their processes. So anyways, that's the 3rd visit. And 4th visit is to take them off. So
let me ask this. As far as if there's a general dentist that's out there and they think, okay, I've got most of our listeners are more than 50% are likely young dentists that are recent owners or about to be an owner in a dental practice. And let's say that they have, a practice that has around 1,000 patients. It's a typical general dental practice. Somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 patients. Based on a practice like that wasn't providing ortho, then they start providing ortho and they do it in an efficient manner. What type of expectations should they have in terms of first-year revenue afterwards? How many cases should they be doing in a year?
Oh my goodness.
You're
going to be blown away by the numbers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, broad strokes. Of course, it depends on your demographics. There's a ton of variables in here because if you're in a kind of super upscale area where people are aware of, I should go to an orthodontist for ortho, it actually, you have more pushback, from doing this. But if you're just kind of in a lower middle class, upper middle class area, maybe where there's not a super convenient ortho or the ortho that's nearby has less convenient hours, he's huge low-hanging fruit for you. Listen, my numbers are, if you give me give me 100 patients. Take photos and a pano if you can on 100 patients. And I do this challenge with doctors all the time if I'm coming in and working with their practice. Take good intraoral records or good records on 100 patients, and I will probably find 85% of your cases need ortho. And I'll find something, and I'm not necessarily like pushing the limits. Like, there's an honest reason why this patient needs ortho. Maybe it's to help with their airway. Maybe it's to help balance the bite a little bit to maintain a restoration, so that it's not wearing unevenly. Or maybe they're having abfractions, or maybe they're having some perio because there's crowding. I mean, I have like a graphic, and I can give this to you later if you want to circulate it, but there's 23 different conditions that are related to ortho. And these are just medical and dental conditions that are all directly related to ortho. And by doing ortho, you can improve these conditions. So you just have to kind of understand a little bit more. And also remember, ortho is not necessarily just teenagers. It can be adults trying to maybe balance out a bite a little bit more, or having better airway, or it could be kids as young as age 2, 3, 4. It's still ortho. It's interceptive ortho that maybe have an oral habit. And I mean, the only people who really probably couldn't use it at all are kids under age 2. Or someone who's edentulous. Otherwise, everyone else, I can probably find something. Sometimes I'm pushing it a little bit, but at least you're opening up the conversation, because for patients, it's really important that you're always giving them their risks, benefits, and alternatives. And maybe you shouldn't make a judgment whether they're interested or not. All you're doing is telling them, hey, did you know this? Did you know that the reason why your fillings are popping out is because your bite is not balanced? And maybe they do want to fix it, and maybe they don't. But at least you're giving them their options.
You're preaching to the choir here. I had braces in high school, and I have full-on braces. I had it for over a little bit over 2 years, and then I never wore my Then I wore my retainer.
Oh, didn't wear your retainer. You are a Smile Direct Club perfect patient.
Yeah, I have Invisalign. Now.
That's who they're looking for.
Yeah, I got Invisalign right now, so I had to pay for it down the line. And it's fine. I mean, that's what ortho is there for. And if I never knew that was an option, then I would never have gotten it. So you have to let the people know what's available to them. And personally, I don't know if it's related. It may be, it may just be in my head. But I felt like I had a lot of headaches before I had my Invisalign fixed. I feel like since I've had Invisalign, the number of headaches I have is way less because of the crowding and things like that. So yeah, no, if anyone's out there
that's actually one of the conditions. Yeah, oral facial pain is a condition that could be improved. So I mean, as you're doing your thorough medical dental exam, and you're starting to get some, kind of red lights and red flags, I mean, you have to think about this. Could it be ortho? You cannot promise them it's a cure-all, but it's an option. And some people will, shoot, especially if they've got some insurance, they might be like, heck yeah, let's do it. Let's try it.
What are some of the limiting beliefs that dentists have about why they can't do ortho in their practice?
Yeah, I mean, so there's 3 reasons that it's so funny. I have slides for all this. So I'm visualizing my slides as we're talking. But the first one, of course, is that it's too expensive. So in their head, they're thinking, oh my goodness, if I want to do ortho, I got to go to a class. I got to fly my staff up for the class. I got to pay for the class, and they're running number signs. I don't have time, First one, obviously, Invisalign, you have to physically go to the class, and it's only a 4-hour class. How much do you really learn? Nothing. ClearCorrect, you don't have to fly out to the class. 6 month smiles, you have to fly out to the class. So, of course, you don't have to physically do this. There's tons of options that don't involve that. But, money. So it's the first one, money and time. The second one is the one where you're pissing off your friend. Because everyone has a friend that's an orthodontist, the most part, a friend from school. Or someone they go golfing with, or they're getting their gifts or their gift cards, and they just don't want to. And this happens more, honestly, in the Midwest and the South and the West Coast and New York. No one could care less. They're like, whatever, who cares? But, they don't want to upset the status quo. My wife is friends with their wife. So what I always say is, listen, don't tell them, don't tell them. And here's the thing, if you start screening your patients more, you're going to be sending them so many more patients. By the time they figure it out, they're going to think you're awesome. If you tell them right off the bat, they're going to be skeptical. They're going to be, because our fear as an orthodontist is like, oh no, so-and-so's starting it and I'm going to get stuck with their mess ups. They screw something up, I'm going to have to fix it, and that's what we don't want. So we just want you to handle your own patients is the main thing.
It's really funny too, because I know of at least 2 orthodontists that have really good practices, really, really good practices. And they are like one of the ways they get the most amount of business is by, is by educating the GPs of how to do it themselves. Like they want to teach other people how to do it. And
I got to meet these people. This would be great if you introduced me sometime, because there's so few people that tell the stories like this. People keep it really, really quiet.
Yeah, and these are orthodontists that they're like, you know what? Hey, I'll help you, with getting these going, because they know that anything that they can't do is guess who that's gonna go to.
Yep.
Or anything that they're afraid of, and it's a great way of doing it. It's a really smart way of generating business. Another, you were talking about how someone could be worried about it and things like that. I've actually heard of bigger practices even acquiring GP practices as referral sources for ortho, like as that's their strategy, is like, hey,
or pedo.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they could say, okay, I could spend, $150,000 in marketing and hope that I get, some traction off of that. Mm-hmm. Or I could spend $1 million and get, 2,000 patients.
Buy me a dental practice. Yep. And then I have my own general dentist, and he has to refer to me because I pay him. So,
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So there's other people out there doing things like that. So, and so as far as, success stories, people who have actually done this, gone and, started adding ortho to their practice. There's a company called Dental Intel that I've spoke with, and we're friendly. And kind of and again, this is one of the things in math is that averages apply to everyone and no one at the same time, which basically means that if someone says the average is, that means there's people way above and there's people way below, and it's a spectrum in between those two. But the number they said was for every patient that you have, you'd basically add $75 in annual revenue would be the goal. So if you have 1,000 patients and you add in a service, then on average across all the additional services you could be offering, that would generate another $75,000 in revenue that year, which in ortho, that's a pretty low bar. I mean, that's 15. If you're doing $5,000 a case, it's 15 cases in a year out of 1,000 patients. Which, if you think about it in those terms, surely everyone out there that has
a problem.
Everyone that's out there should think, okay, I got 1,000 patients. I should be able to get 15 of them to agree. I'm sure everyone who's out there who has 1,000 patients can think of 15 patients. They're like, yeah, they need ortho. I probably should talk to them about it right now. So
that won't be a problem. I can find those in about 2 minutes.
Exactly. So do you have, do you have, what you typically see people do in that? I'm trying to just get an idea so people can say, okay, right now I'm doing, because one of the goals a lot of my clients have is, okay, they get up to $1 million, $1.2 million in revenue. And that's kind of their own personal capacity limit. Like they can't, their ability to produce more than that personally is hindered. I think they, for whatever reason, they can't get above that hump.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, ways in which they can, add a bump to that, which with just the business sense of it says you either have to see more patients in the same amount of time or do more revenue per patient. It's one of the two things has to happen. And ortho is a big dollar case. And, from what you're saying, in a lot of cases, it's not a large hourly commitment.
Yeah, if you set it up correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's put it this way. If someone brings me in, and I don't give away names. I mean, I know people would love it if I was like, I work with Dr. X. This is really their choice if they want to disclose that they work with me. And most doctors, I get it. Like, they're afraid to disclose that they work with me because it's going to make it look like that they needed help. From a liability reason, they don't want to disclose that. So that's cool. My marketing team is not too happy about that, but I'm not going to disclose their names. But I'll talk about a few success stories I've had with some doctors that have just taken it and run with it. So this is what they did, and this is my most successful transformations of practices. So these are doctors that have one or more practices. Sometimes just one, and sometimes we end up acquiring more when with them. And they not only decide to screen every single patient for ortho, like I said, you have to screen every single patient. They collect records, like I said, photos. They make this part of their process that they do with every patient. Every patient, what are you going to do? You're going to come in. Doesn't matter if they're a kid, they're an adult. You're going to do an exam. For adults, you might do a perio. You might do oral cancer. Well, everyone gets a full set of photos. I mean, photos are easy. Anyone can take photos. I don't care if it's your front desk. There's no licensure you need to take photos. Matter of fact, most of your staff probably take 1 million photos a day anyways on Instagram. So all you have to do is set up the systems, have a designated camera, a chip, and I can tell you how to set this up. You take a full set of intraoral photos. It's an 8-panel. It takes about 3 minutes. Anyone can do it, so you can team up. You upload them, into your Open Dental or whatever. At the end of the day, either as a team or the doctor, you review the photos. And a lot of times I'll get with my doctors and I'll review them with them. Or they'll screen them first, and then we'll talk about the ones they're not sure about. But we'll look for opportunities together. And it often opens up a dialogue. You're like, oh, I didn't know that this patient could use braces, or I didn't know I could do aligners on this case, or I didn't know I could improve this. But if you set up for the doctors that are most successful, not only are they doing that, so it's a small change, and your whole team has to be on board, and you're the boss. So if you tell them they have to take photos on every patient, then that's just one more thing that they get to do. But I'm promising the ROI will pay off exponentially over time, because as you start to collect sets of intraoral photos over time, which is non-invasive, and they're coming in for their recall visits, and you're putting them up on the screen, and look, here's your photos from 2019, 2018. You could just do it once a year. You can look for historical trends, and you're looking and you're seeing progressions of disease, like crowding's getting worse, abfraction's getting worse, attrition's getting worse, arch is getting more narrow, and you're looking at things. Lips are getting flatter, et cetera, et cetera. And there's nothing that sells the case more than that. It's just incredibly powerful, because you're not making something up. They see it with their own eyes. So that's the first thing that the doctors do. And like I said, this isn't necessarily going to pay off instantaneously. It's over time it becomes more valuable, but certainly you'll find tons of opportunities from within the first couple of weeks that you do it. Number 2 that they do is they establish a good, better, best system with their orthodontic options. So, and they don't just only do like Invisalign. There's no way to be successful just only doing Invisalign. Unless you're the only guy in Montana that does it. It's just, this is the way you did it 20, 15 years ago, but now that's not going to happen. You can't come in only doing Invisalign. You have to be like, yes, I do aligners, and I do Invisalign, which I do recommend, because for the SEO, everyone still thinks of it as Invisalign. So if you're not doing Invisalign, you can't use it on your SEO. So, of course, you should get certified in Invisalign. You should do Invisalign. But you also should have a good, better, best model, and you should offer generic clear aligners too, at a much lower cost, so that you can reach those super easy patients that are out there that are going to have the same outcome with, $1,000, $1,500 less lab fee, that you can either pocket yourself, or you can cut the price, or, meet the patient equally, so that you can reach patients that just can't afford a $5,000 case. But you do that. And also, I don't recommend only doing aligners, because there's a certain percentage of your patients that are just going to be non-compliant, or just are not interested in aligners, and they really want fixed, whether they're younger or they just had a bad experience, or that's what they want. And braces are so easy to do nowadays, with the digital bracket placement, self-lighting brackets if you want to do it. It's so incredibly easy. You should offer that too. And guess what? You might want to offer a good, better, best option with that in terms of brackets and stuff like that. And now we're taking it a step further. If you're going to do that, you should also offer phase 1 appliances or functional appliances. Now you can work with the kids from age 2, 3, 4 up through 9. That's a whole nother group. And that's super low hanging fruit for growing a practice. Because first of all, with phase 1, I think it scares people. They're like, oh, that's so hard, growth modification, expanding palates, whatever. It's so easy. It's so incredibly easy, because little kids are so compliant, so awesome, so fun to work with. And guess what? There's almost no doctor time. You can train your assistant to do it all, and you're just supervising. And this is where, the way that you can grow a practice and make the most revenue out of it is delegating,
Oh, yeah.
Not you doing everything. So, if you can have multiple your assistants doing most of the ortho, and you're just watching it from a high level, then you can be doing tons of cases at one time, and you're really not doing anything.
And what do you feel like it's easier?
So.
Do you feel like it's easier for a pediatric practice or a GP practice to add ortho that didn't have it beforehand?
Pedo is definitely easier. Because every kid can probably use it, from whether they're using it now or later, and it's just there's definitely more opportunity. But you'd be surprised how few pediatric dentists are doing it or doing any of it. It just kind of blows my mind, because it's like you work on little mouths anyways. Why not? But for the same reasons, they're a little scared, and often they don't learn much about it in their residency.
So what about that? One thing that I find that is helpful for listeners is, what would you recommend someone do to get their first patient to do this? Because we all know, like, anytime you do something new, there's just so much analysis paralysis most of the time.
First patient. Analysis paralysis. So I've heard that before. Yeah, first patient should be your staff.
Okay.
Your staff is the easiest. Yeah, just go with your staff. No charge it for your staff. You're a good staff. And nothing better to advertise your services than if your staff's wearing them. So have all your staff in it. Every staff member would love to have a tiny gap closed or have a little bit of crowding improved for no cost. And guess what? The deal is, if they're going to do that, they get to blog, post, and Instagram about it too. So that's the best way to do it, and get the kinks out. Get the nerves out for the team as well. Let them practice and learn on each other. And you can also do the staff's kids if you want to do phase 1 or braces, and get the nerves out on that. And then you can go ahead. That's your soft launch. And you don't have to. I wouldn't even necessarily advertise that you're doing it while you're in soft beta launch.
Sure. I
would just be quietly screening and talking about it and trying it. And then once you get your confidence up, you can do your big launch. You can, throw it on your website, start creating content around it and putting it out there. And, and if your patients are really having this is transformative for the most part. If they're having an awesome experience with it and you're encouraging them to talk about it to others, nowadays, if you're treating people under age 35, 40, they're on Instagram all the time. They're taking pictures of themselves, create that hashtag, tell them to talk about their teeth, have rewards for doing that, and things are going to start going viral.
Yeah. One thing I really like too is by doing it with your employee is that, you mentioned getting everyone on the right track together as a team. And I don't know of a better way to be able to get the team to see the benefits of what you're doing than to have someone on the team be like, yeah, this is, awesome. I've always wanted this to look better. And now it does. They can, they are a testimonial inside of your ecosystem that can allow you to roll this out much more efficiently. So that's a really good idea. So as far as, the profitability. So we've talked a little bit about revenue. Like you said, there's a good, better, best, options for people out there. So, and for people listening to that, basically what we're saying is that, most people, if you give them options, they're more likely to take an option than if you just give them one choice, yes or no. Right. Then it allows them to have more flexibility, allows you to overcome more obstacles, get them to say yes a little bit easier. At least that's what the sales people all tell us. And when I'm saying sales, I'm talking about psychological studies on sales. The thing that a lot of people want to know though is, okay, that's the sales side, that's revenue. And then I have my time involvement, and then I have to, pay for labs and things like that, and training and all these other things. When do I actually make money out of this thing? So how do people add the revenue and then still get to keep some of that money without spending it all on labs or something like that? Because we all know, even I have heard from clients and friends that say, oh man, Invisalign, $1,800 for a lab fee.
It's going up. It's raising up this summer, even more. It's going to be almost $1,900.
Yeah. So, and then they're like, if we do like $3 billion in revenue, it's like $1,750 or whatever, So that's obviously an exaggeration, but it can be expensive, and it's hard to find that margin where you make money too. So how do people go about optimizing that revenue and profit?
Sure. Again, the good, better, best model is great because now you can charge a little bit more for your Invisalign to recoup the lab fees. So maybe you're going to charge $5,500 to $6,000 for a case. This is what we used to charge in the olden days. But that will cover your lab fees of your $1,900 plus your retainer. So, a full Invisalign case is going to be with retention is going to be $2,200. That's your lab fee, So you need to make sure you're making your money back. So that will allow you to charge more. Then you can screen and take the easy cases. Those are applicable, and this is where I work with doctors on finding where that line is. There's a lot of, one of the companies, and I'm not here to plug companies, I'm just going to tell you who I recommend at this moment. I use a lot of two companies. One of them is called Full Contour. The other one is called iRock DDS. And these are aligner design companies. So what you do is you'll just send your STL file. I do strongly recommend, if you're going to get an ortho, that you do get an intraoral scanner. I think if you're going to invest in something, that's what you should invest in. And you're not only using it just for ortho, you're going to use it for all your cases. It's just going to make everything way more accurate and quicker and a better patient experience. But a lot of people are afraid that they're going to have to pay a lot of money for this. There are a lot of scanner companies that are doing lease to own. They're doing $500 a month lease. They're doing lease and try it out, for a month and see how it goes. So if you're interested, I'm sure most people have connections, but if not, let me know and I can connect you. But get the scanner, try it out, submit your cases. The easy ones for aligners, you can send to one of these design companies. They'll charge between $99 and $200, depending on which company you're using and how complex the case is, to do the setup, which is basically like your ClinCheck for the easy cases. It's a setup, just works the same way, where you're going to see the stages and you're going to approve it virtually. And the cool thing I like about these design companies is that they're incredibly accurate. For Invisalign and ClearCorrect, just to let you know, I help with doctors all the time. And on average, it takes me 4 go-arounds to get the 4 go-arounds for Invisalign and probably 6 to 7 go-arounds for ClearCorrect. They're going to be really mad I say this, but it's the truth. That's how many go-arounds it takes me to revise a case to get it perfect. That's frustrating, and time is money. So you can't just accept the first treatment plan that comes your way. You have to get it perfected so that it's going to be accurate and it's actually going to be, optimal, and it's actually going to happen. So that's another trick that's in there, and you'll learn to do that over time. But the cool thing about these kind of newer design companies is that for some reason their treatment plans are super accurate. Like, they come back, usually I'd say 80-90% of the time when they come back the first time, and I look at my doctors, I'm like, yeah, that's a really good treatment plan. Like, they did it right. Exactly how I would do it, and that's why they're having so much success, is that they're idealized. But then from there, they're going to go ahead and you can either, if you have your own 3D printer, it's even cheaper. But if you don't worry about it. I wouldn't recommend investing in that because that's a big investment and there's a lot of upkeep. But you can export it to one of like 10, 15 different partner labs that these design companies export to, and the prices are all over the place, and it really depends on what type of thermoplastic material you want, how you want the trim, how you want it packaged, white labeled, and it's all over the place. But I would say it's as low as $12 to $15 per aligner.
Wow.
For this kind of white labeling of aligners, So it's not coming in a fancy box necessarily. It's just coming in, bags, 1 through 15, 1 through 10, upper and lower. But do the math on how much you're saving. I mean, let's compare apples to apples. Let's say we'll say it's a 15 case. Hopefully I'm doing the math right in my head, because a 15 case with Invisalign would be a full case anyways. So 15, we already said Invisalign with retainers is going to be $2,200. So let's say it is 15 upper and lower. We said that the setup cost is going to be around $100 to $150. Let's see, 15 upper and 15 lower. Now I got to do the math.
It's around $650, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So, that's pretty cheap. You're going to have this full case be less than $1,000 with retainers. So that's half. You're saving half. You're saving $1,000 right there, right off the top. So that is a big price difference. So you can either offer that discount to the patient, or you can meet them halfway, but certainly that's more profit in your pocket. Plus, I find that, like I said, these treatment plans are actually more accurate. I don't know whether they're just less volume and they're taking more time with them. But if you're not doing revisions, refinements, and things are actually turning out the first time, that's less times that you have to see the patient. So, in, out, and done, it's all basically profit in your pocket once you go ahead and sell that case. So it's kind of a little tip right there.
I feel like the number one objection that patients have, that I've heard from my docs, to big cases is typically money. So if you have a way to make it more affordable, it's okay. We've got, say you're charging $2,500 instead of the $5,000 or $6,000, whatever you're charging before, and you save $1,000 on the lab fees. You can charge them, a few $100 a month and let them pay it off over a year. And
absolutely, you got to have good financing.
Yeah, you get a lot more yeses, to
and
to
I
solve
think with aligners, everyone is like always like, I got to collect up front. Because I got to pay the lot fee. If they get billed for Invisalign up front. Well, sometimes when you're doing this kind of exporting and stuff, you don't always have to get billed up front because they're not necessarily making it all at one time. There's a lot of different options and it's a lot lower. So now you can charge the patient $200 down, which is basically your design cost. Well, listen, if you go to the average patient and you say, hey, you can have Invisalign for $2,000 down, or you can have clear aligners for $200 down, they're going to go, give me the clear aligners for $200 down, you know?
Sure.
And now you can go into the average market and have to say, this is how direct-to-consumer is expanding. This is the mistake that we made in the aligner world, you know, requiring these patients to pay $2,000 down because the average American can't put $2,000 down if you ask him to. They just can't, you know, for whatever reason. So by opening this up and offering good, better, best, now you can offer your aligners to the average American, which I think is the whole point.
You know, I think I saw something that said something like 85% of Americans, you know, live paycheck to paycheck, or even are more in debt than what they're, you know, with non-secured debt. In other words, not their home mortgage or cars. They're more in debt than 2 or 3 months of their salaries. So you know, being able to add anything in is really hard for a lot of people right now. So anything that you can do to make that easier, it's gonna help out a lot with that. So cool. So you know, as far as the getting, you know, we've talked about who can benefit from adding ortho. We've talked about you know, what type of revenue that could look like. We've talked about how to make more profit out of it. I think the last question that I really have is for those doctors that are out there that are still on the fence and have that limiting belief of, you know, yes, I understand why I should have ortho. I'm not scared of the easy cases. I'm scared of the cases that go bad. What type of solutions do they have to be able to solve issues that come up with that? I mean, is that the time when they say, hey, they back out and say, hey, something's gone wrong here. I'm going to need to refer you to an orthodontist. Do they need to hire somebody like yourself to be able to say, you know, here's what went wrong. Here's how we fix it. How does that person get past this objection?
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I mean, even orthodontists have cases that go wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong. We've had the cases where I totally handled this the wrong way because I mean, especially with growth and stuff, sometimes we misjudge. But even more so, I mean, I have come into plenty GP pedo practices where they've done some oopsies and they've probably taken a lot of cases that they shouldn't have taken, or they're treating them the wrong way. Most of the time, it's because it was a surgical case and they tried to do some type of ortho on it and it didn't work. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions, like I talked about before, is just because you're submitting a case to Invisalign or ClearCorrect and the animation looks like it works out, that doesn't mean that's going to happen. And it takes a lot of experience to be able to say, that's, you know, I call BS on this. This is not going to happen, you know? And so many times I'll be in literally an argument in a nice way with the doctor and they're like, well, but the ClinCheck said it's possible. So it should be possible. I'm like, no, the ClinCheck is just a video game. Just because it makes it happen doesn't mean it's really going to happen. And that takes experience and knowledge to know when to call BS, you know, and not do it. So, but yeah, we've totally, I've come in and helped doctors many times just clean up and fix and, what's the word? Damage control, trying to make cases turn out. And occasionally you have to refer to ortho and just work on your scripting. So hopefully it's not a liability, you know, but for the most part, we can fix the cases. And most patients are pretty understanding, especially when it has to do with growth, you know, just the scripting on knowing how to handle it. So a lot of times there's doctors where they started a case on a 12, 13, 14-year-old and they didn't know how to do a ceph or check growth. And this patient just grew a huge jaw, you know, and they didn't know. And orthodontists, we do know. We know to look for certain trends but we also have built into our terms and conditions and our informed consent that these type of things can happen. And when it happens, you know, this is what we do. So basically in a nutshell, you know, we can teach the doctors how to undo the damage and how to talk to the patients and hopefully how to, you know, get this patient in a decent type of bite and a decent kind of outcome that the patients are still happy with. But yeah, I mean, that's basically, it's either that or you're going to work with your neighborhood orthodontist, but either way.
I love it. So, and, you know, just to add again to the end of this, I'm a big believer that adding services is a really great way to be able to optimize revenue inside dental practices, to kind of help get, raise that bar of what your total, your personal capacity for production is. A lot of people don't talk about in the dental world how much your clinical abilities and what you can offer your patients, how much that actually influences your revenue in your practice as well as your profit in your practice. It was multiple years ago, I did an analysis on as many clients that would let me of their, the revenue versus their service mixes. And I found the ones that had, very, very, very profitable practices, they were the dentists that could do the most in production. I mean, I know that's something that sounds fairly fairly intuitive, but not very many people talk about that. They're all, there's always
your clinical suite. You gotta expand your clinical suite. Yeah, I mean, if you're referring stuff out, that's less for you. So, for sure.
And another thing that we found is not just the referring it out, but just being the person that's there to be able to help the patients more. That's going to be able, because a lot of the times they wouldn't even, they like you said, you'll see with your GPs 85% that have ortho needs. Those people weren't being referred anywhere. Probably they probably were only being referred if someone said, "Hey, who do you recommend for an orthodontist?" Unless it was pretty dramatic, obviously. So anyway, I'm a big believer in it. I think it's a really smart thing to do if your heart's in it, if your interests are in it. If your heart's not in it, your interests aren't in it, then it's probably not going to be a good idea one way or the other. So profit shouldn't be the only reason that you're thinking about those things. But in terms of the business, discussion, I think it's an important piece of the puzzle. So, Dr. Amanda, I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been a really interesting chat. I feel like we've shared a lot of really cool information. If anyone else has any other questions about what it is that you do and how to get this started in their practice and things like that, where do they need to go? How can they find out more about you, your program, and things like that?
Sure. And first of all, I'd like to say off the top that I offer everyone on your podcast a complimentary support session. So that means that you can just go to my website, which is straightsmilesolutions.com. In the homepage in the top right, there's a button that says schedule a call. Please do schedule a call. I get calls all the time. And, it's just kind of like, we're not going to necessarily be looking at cases. We're just going to be talking about your practice. And but you'll learn a lot from just that conversation, that 20-minute conversation. It's free. There's no obligation. I love to have conversations, and I learn from you too. So it's really the favorite part of my day. So please do schedule those calls. Anyone around the world, I don't care. I get calls from all kinds of countries, and I think the times are pretty convenient, so you'll find it a really convenient scheduling app. Beyond that, we have tons of free services. We have free webinars. If you go to on the homepage, you'll see a button for seminars and webinars. We have I think there's like 8 up right now, from like braces to aligners, to finishing solutions, how to finish an open bite case. There's tons of just specialists that we have on for webinars, and these are all free. You can come on, you can be live, you can be engaging. Beyond that, we have like 200 YouTube videos, which has demonstrations on how to do pretty much everything. And if I don't have something up there, just tell me and we'll create it for you most of the part if I can. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be doing jaw surgery on air, but if it's something that can be done relatively easily, we have tons of vendors who are like willing to give us their products just to showcase it, to show you how to use them. So yeah, I mean, let us know what you want to learn and we'll teach you. That's, again, all free. Beyond that, if you want to have more one-on-one support and actually dive into your cases or have help within your practice, we're no commitment. So we basically tell people there's no contracts, anything like that. You can, with 30 days notice, you can cancel anytime. You can sign up as low as $199 for support with a case. Maybe you're stuck on an Invisalign case or whatever, to subscriptions that are crazy cheap. I think our prices are really low. Unlimited support in your practice. Someone always there for you to help you with any type of system. We really, except for direct to consumer, we will help you with any type of ortho system that's on the market. If you don't know what system you want to use, we will recommend one for the best one for the case, and or find you the cheapest one depending on what you're looking for. And I'm familiar with, in my team too, we're familiar with every system on the market. Pretty much we've used it. Beyond that, we also have hands-on classes if you want to learn things like straight wire, how to place brackets, IPR. We have destination and digital classes, and prices are actually quite low for that too. So we pretty much have a turnkey option for either launching ortho in your practice, scaling ortho in your practice, or making your ortho more profitable. So that's pretty much how we work.
Love it. Well, again, Dr. Amanda, thanks so much. Guys, if you're listening, or if you've listened all the way through now, you obviously have some interest in ortho. Reach out to Dr. Amanda and learn more about ortho in your practice. And maybe that'll be the key to making a little bit more money and reaching that next goal that you have for your practice. So again, Dr. Amanda, thanks again. And we will see you all next time.
Thank you.
So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice.